I've never committed a crime in my life. But on that night, at the ripe age of 78, I officially became a fugitive. It all started with a burger. Or rather, the lack of a proper burger. Sunny Pines Retirement Home wasn't a bad place. It had soft beds, bingo nights, and an endless supply of warm applesauce. But the food? A disaster. Everything was boiled, bland, and robbed of its dignity. Even the mashed potatoes somehow tasted dry. Frank Sullivan, my best friend and fellow inmate, resident at Sunny Pines, had suffered alongside me for 3 years. He was a stubborn Brooklyn-born ex-cop with a bad knee and a worse temper, especially when it came to hospital-style cooking. One afternoon, as we stared down yet another plate of mystery meat, Frank leaned in and whispered, "Arthur, we gotta get out of here." I raised an eyebrow. "To where exactly?" "I don't think they'll let us back into the army." He smirked. "Not far. Just 3 blocks down. Joe's Diner." Now, Joe's Diner wasn't just any burger joint. It was legendary. A place of sizzling bacon, juicy patties, and milkshakes so thick they could hold up a spoon. We used to go there all the time before we got stuck in this well-intentioned prison. I chuckled. "Frank, we can't just walk out. They'll catch us before we even hit the sidewalk." He tapped his temple. "That's why we need a plan." And so, Operation Great Escape was born. The strategy was simple. 1. Wait for movie night. Every Thursday at 7 p.m., the nurses dimmed the lights for some old black and white film. 2. Fake bedtime. We'd yawn, shuffle back to our rooms, and pretend to sleep. 3. Sneak out the side door. The lock was loose. We'd tested it months ago in case of emergency pudding-related evacuations. 4. Make it to Joe's Diner without breaking a hip. Easy, right? Wrong. At 7:15 p.m., we peeked down the hallway. Coast clear. We tiptoed toward the exit, moving slower than a turtle on muscle relaxers. Frank reached for the side door handle and yanked. It didn't budge. I whispered, "Maybe they fixed it." Frank scoffed. "Nah, they're too cheap for that." He grunted, wiggled the knob harder. Pop! The door flung open, and Frank nearly flew into the bushes. I caught him just in time. We took off down the sidewalk, trying to act casual, though it's hard to be inconspicuous when you're 2 old men power-walking in matching cardigans. We were halfway there when Frank groaned and clutched his stomach. "Oh no!" "What?" "That damn pudding is fighting back." I stared. "Frank, no. I need a bathroom now." And just like that, Operation Great Escape turned into Mission Digestive Emergency. Frank hobbled toward a gas station restroom, leaving me standing on the curb, alone. I sighed. Was this how my grand rebellion ended? Alone, ditched for a stomachache? Then in the distance I saw it, Joe's Diner, glowing like a beacon of hope. I squared my shoulders. If Frank couldn't complete the mission, I'd do it for both of us. And that's how I walked into Joe's Diner that night, completely unaware that my world was about to change forever. Joe's Diner hadn't changed one bit. The neon signs buzzed softly, the red leather booths smelled faintly of fries, and the jukebox in the corner hummed an old Elvis tune. I slid into a booth by the window, feeling like I'd just won a war. A young waitress named Lisa came over, chewing gum. "What can I get you, hon?" I didn't hesitate. 1 cheeseburger, extra bacon, and a vanilla milkshake. She grinned. "Coming right up." As I waited, I took in the sights. The teenagers at the counter, the couple in the corner holding hands, the trucker stirring his coffee. Then, my eyes landed on her. She was sitting alone near the jukebox, dressed in a soft blue blouse. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, her face touched with faint wrinkles, but those eyes, warm, deep, thoughtful. Eyes I hadn't seen in 60 years. I blinked, my heart thudding. No, it couldn't be. The past and present blurred. Could it? Lisa returned with my order, but I barely noticed. The woman looked up. Our eyes met. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. I could see the moment recognition dawned on her face. Her lips parted, and she whispered a name. "Arthur?" The air left my lungs. Because I knew that voice. I had dreamed of that voice. Margaret Reynolds. My first love. The girl I had once sworn to marry. the one I had lost 6 decades ago. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Margaret's gaze softened. Well, I'll be damned. The jukebox hummed softly. The smell of burgers filled the air. But the only thing I could feel was the weight of 6 decades pressing down on my chest. She smiled just a little. You look exactly the same. I let out a weak chuckle. Margaret, I think you need glasses. She laughed, shaking her head. Arthur Thompson. Of all places. I wanted to say something witty, something clever, but my mind was a tangled mess of memories and questions. And then, in a moment of pure, ridiculous Arthurness, my burger slipped from my hands. Plop! Right into my milkshake. Margaret burst into laughter. A real, full-bellied, joyful laugh. And just like that, 60 years vanished. I looked at her and realized, fate wasn't done with us yet. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Margaret Reynolds. My Margaret. I had spent years convincing myself she was just a bittersweet memory, something tucked away in the dusty corners of my heart, never to be revisited. Yet here she was, sitting across from me in a red leather booth at Joe's Diner, stirring her coffee like she hadn't just unraveled 6 decades of my carefully built reality. I forced air into my lungs and gave her a hesitant smile. You sure it's me you're remembering? Not some other devilishly handsome Arthur? Margaret chuckled, shaking her head. Oh no, I'd recognize that ridiculous smirk anywhere. I grinned, but my hands trembled slightly as I reached for my soggy burger. Well, this is unexpected. She let out a small laugh. Understatement of the year. The jukebox hummed an old tune in the background, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I didn't know whether to dive straight into 1,000 questions or just sit there and let the moment soak in. Margaret tilted her head, studying me. I almost didn't recognize you without that wild hair of yours. I huffed. I'll have you know I chose this distinguished silver fox look. She smirked. So the bald spot is intentional? I let out a bark of laughter, shaking my head. All right, I walked into that one. Lisa, the waitress, returned with a fresh milkshake, eyeing my ruined first one with amusement. You need another burger to go with that, sweetheart? I glanced at Margaret before nodding. Yeah, I think I do. Lisa winked and walked away. Margaret traced the rim of her coffee cup. So, Arthur, where have you been all these years? The question hit harder than I expected. I sighed. Oh, here, there. Lived a life, I suppose. Married once, widowed. Got old. Ended up in a retirement home with a guy named Frank who thinks pudding is a government conspiracy. Margaret chuckled, but there was something wistful in her eyes. What about you? I asked softly. She took a slow sip of coffee before answering. Married. Divorced. Raised 2 boys. Lost one to cancer 10 years ago. Her voice faltered for a split second, but then she smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Did a little traveling. Never really settled anywhere. Guess I just kept moving. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'm sorry, Margaret. About your son. She nodded, her fingers tightening around the cup. Thanks. Another silence stretched between us, not awkward, but heavy with things unsaid. Finally, she exhaled and gave me a sideways glance. So let me get this straight. You ran away from your retirement home just for a burger? I cleared my throat. Technically, yes. Margaret smirked. Still reckless, I see. I shrugged. Some things never change. Her smile softened. No, they don't. And just like that, the years between us seemed to shrink. For the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a random coincidence. Maybe fate was giving us another shot. The diner had mostly emptied out. The clock above the counter ticked past midnight, but neither of us made a move to leave. Margaret leaned back in the booth, stirring the last of her coffee. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting to run into you tonight. I smirked. I wasn't expecting to become a fugitive tonight, so I'd say we're even. She chuckled, shaking her head. So what now? I hesitated. What now? A younger version of me would have grabbed her hand and promised to never let go again. But 60 years had passed. We weren't kids anymore. Life had happened to us. And yet, I didn't want to let her walk out of my life. Not again. I took a deep breath. Margaret, do you think maybe we don't have to say goodbye this time? She blinked, her expression unreadable. Arthur, I rushed to explain, suddenly nervous. I mean, look, I know we're old, and we've both lived our lives. But if there's one thing I've learned in that retirement home, it's that time isn't something we can afford to waste anymore. Margaret didn't answer right away. Instead, she just stared at me, as if weighing something in her mind. Then slowly she smiled. You always were a dreamer. I grinned. And you always were the only one who made those dreams feel real. She shook her head with a quiet laugh, then reached across the table and took my hand. The warmth of her fingers sent a shiver down my spine. All right, Arthur, she said softly. Let's not waste it. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at her, feeling lighter than I had in years. Then I cleared my throat. Well, in that case, I should probably find a way to sneak back into Sunny Pines before they send out a search party. Margaret smirked. Oh, I have to see this. And just like that, we walked out of Joe's diner together side by side. The Florida night was thick and warm, the streetlights casting a golden glow over everything. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking back toward something I had lost. I was walking forward, toward something new, toward someone I never thought I'd see again. And as Margaret slipped her arm through mine, I realized something. Sometimes life surprises you when you least expect it. And sometimes, if you're lucky enough, love does too.